This is your 10-Minute Tuesday. I'm Dr. Kerry-Ann Williams. 10-Minute Tuesdays are spin-off bonus episodes from my Black Mental Health Matters podcast. In these mini episodes, I cover a variety of mental health topics, not necessarily specific to the Black community. Today, I wanted to give you a snippet on some important aspects of what it means to be a psychologically healthy adult. Today, I'm going to focus on the psychological theories of a man named Erik Erikson, who was a German-American psychoanalyst. He outlined these stages of psychosocial development that spans from infancy to old age. But today, I'm just going to focus on the adult portions of his theory. I found Erikson's outline to be a helpful lens to use when thinking about aspects of psychological wellness. What I'm going to talk about today are normal psychological conflicts that all of us face during our lives. The normative conflicts help us to grow and emerge with greater psychological health. Now, as a caveat, what I'm going to talk about in this mini episode does not include individuals with a diagnosed mental health condition. If you're formally diagnosed with something, then that would have an additional influence on your psychological health in a way that I can't really account for in this episode. So let's get into it. The first psychological stage that I'm going to talk about takes place from about age 20 to about age 40. This is young adulthood. The normal psychological conflict that we all experience in young adulthood is called intimacy versus isolation. Intimacy is social closeness with others. Intimate relationships involve emotional closeness and openness or honesty. Fear or discomfort with intimacy and reluctance to engage socially with others can lead to isolation. The truth here is that meaningful social relationships are a key aspect of psychological health. It is through intimate social relationships that we experience love. And love in all its forms is a core value in this stage of psychological development. My professional opinion is that sometimes people, when talking about this intimacy versus isolation stage of development, can over-focus on the romantic relationships as a marker for whether you have successfully navigated this stage. That would be a mistake because individuals can engage in dating and relationships and even get married, yet experience an overall lack of meaningful relationships in their life. They may still experience poor emotional intimacy and still feel isolated and lonely. I would say that by the time you're around age 40, if you have formed meaningful and enduring social connections that are strong and positive and not just superficial, you have most likely successfully experienced social and emotional intimacy and love. So what if you're listening to this and thinking that you may be leaning more towards isolation? If isolation is winning and you are not experiencing intimacy, here are a few things to think about. Number one, healthy relationships are reciprocal. Are you relying on other people to reach out to you? How do you initiate showing love to those around you? Number two, intimacy requires sharing yourself with others. Therefore, intimacy requires trust. Do you approach relationships with guardedness? Do you ask others to share personal details that you yourself would never share? How do you decide who is trustworthy? Number three, how do you handle rejection? Sometimes people pull away from intimacy and find themselves isolated because they anticipate rejection. To form relationships is to risk rejection sometimes, recover from that, and then move forward. Number four, sometimes therapy can help. If you have experienced childhood trauma or serious relationship ruptures, such as death of a partner or divorce, it may be helpful to work things through with a professional. Number five, it may be that you have not mastered the previous psychological stage from adolescence called identity versus role confusion, which focuses on developing your sense of self. If you're still struggling with your sense of self, you may have difficulty forming healthy relationships. Number 6, you may have some social anxiety or lack social skills. This is totally fixable. Social skills can be learned, practiced, and mastered. Social anxiety can be improved through motivation and practice. Okay, next stage. The next psychological stage that I'm going to talk about takes place from about age 40 to about age 65. This is middle adulthood. The normal psychological conflict that we all experience in middle adulthood is called generativity versus stagnation. Generativity is producing, creating, expanding, and contributing to the world. You start to think about how to support future generations and how to engage in meaningful work that generates both tangible and intangible outcomes that will outlast you. You spend more time taking care of others, your children, your own parents, your junior staff at work. The truth here is that care, focusing on pouring into others, is a key aspect of being psychologically healthy. On the other side, however, is stagnation, which is feeling stuck and unproductive and lacking a sense of purpose. Now, many of us come to a point in our lives or careers where we feel stuck. This is normal. However, if this goes on for long enough, and if you continue to struggle to achieve a sense of meaningful contribution to the world, if you tend to feel disconnected from society and generally uninvolved, then you may start to experience stagnation. You are at a particularly higher risk of stagnation if you didn't make it through the previous stage successfully, the intimacy versus isolation stage. If you experienced more isolation than intimacy. If you lack social connectedness, then you are less likely to be focused on taking care of others, which can lead to a sense of a lack of contribution, which can lead to a lack of purpose and lower life satisfaction. Do you think you might be struggling with stagnation? Here are some things to think about. Number 1, find a way to pour into the next generation. This may be through mentoring, teaching, funding projects that help youth. Number 2, explore your own creativity. Learn a new hobby or skill, especially if that connects you to others. For example, if you're learning a new language, then join a language learning group. Don't just study at home by yourself. If you have an interest in music, then join an adult choir. Explore your creativity in a way that connects you with others. Number 3, make career changes that promote growth and evolution in your professional development. Getting increased years of experience while staying at the same level at work can lead to dissatisfaction and a feeling of stagnation. If you're self-employed, is it time to expand your business and hire employees? If you work for a company, should you talk to your supervisor about opportunities for further professional development? Do you have the ability to make changes to your schedule that gives you more time for pursuits outside of work? Okay, now, final stage. The last psychological stage that I'm going to talk about takes place from about age 65 onwards. This is late adulthood. The normal psychological conflict that we all experience in late adulthood is called integrity versus despair. Integrity is short for ego integrity and involves a sense of wholeness of the self. In this stage, you ask yourself the question, did I live a meaningful life? And this question, this psychological stage, can sometimes be triggered by things like retirement or witnessing the loss of people that you went through life with. You start to think about your own mortality. If you experience ego integrity in this stage, you have a sense of acceptance of yourself and your life in general, with little to no focus on regrets, a sense of peace, and a feeling of having gained valuable wisdom. And we can see how things build through the psychological stages, from forming a stable sense of self in adolescence to having meaningful social relationships in young adulthood. to having a sense of generativity, care for others, and meaningful work in middle adulthood, to then having a sense of having lived a meaningful life in late adulthood. And accumulating that body of wisdom that is your pleasure to share is a key aspect of psychological health in late adulthood. On the other end, you may be leaning away from integrity and into despair if you're instead feeling a sense that your life was wasted. If you're feeling bitter, ruminating on mistakes and regrets, and feeling unproductive, you may be at risk for hopelessness and depression. If you find that you or someone you know is leaning more towards despair versus integrity, here are a few considerations. Number one, think back to the previous stages, the intimacy of close social connections, and the sense of meaning in generativity. Try to restore or maintain previous social connections and develop new social connections. Social connectedness is a powerful source of psychological wellness. Also, think about ways to be generative. Find a way to contribute to other generations. This can help to shift your ruminative self-focus toward meaningful contributions to society. It's not too late to live a meaningful life. Number two, about ruminating on regrets. Beware of the cognitive bias of magnifying the negatives and filtering out all the positives. Be intentional about reflecting on positive memories and life events. Number three, it's not too late to learn new things and explore your creativity. Experience everything that the world has to offer every single day. Number four, for those who are interacting with older adults, ask them questions that encourages them to impart the wisdom that they have learned. In late adulthood, there is a lot of fulfillment in knowing that your life experiences were meaningful and that the knowledge you gained can be helpful to others. Number five, again, for those interacting with older adults, tell them about the impact that they have made on your life. You assume that they know, but it is important to tell people directly the specific ways that they have contributed to you as a person. This is also a tangible way to help them know that their life still has purpose and is important to you. And that's it for this 10-Minute Tuesday. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you have any questions or comments, reach out to me on social media or write a comment below if you're watching this on YouTube. Take care and have a great week.